Her yoga night came with a receipt and someone else's hands. The red ribbon wasn't mine, and it wasn't hers. I found it under a stack of sweaters in the bottom drawer of our dresser, a bright satin coil, still warm with the ghost of perfume that didn't smell like anything Camille ever wore. It was the kind of ribbon that doesn't tie around presents, it ties around plans. When I lifted it, a small white tag fluttered free and landed face up on my sock. Thursday. We've been married 5 years. We have a calendar above the coffee machine where everything lives: dinners, dentist, anniversaries reduced to neat squares and polite reminders. Every Thursday, Camille Square says the same thing: yoga, 7-9. She leaves in leggings and returns flushed and loose, like water poured back into its bowl. I usually grade papers while she's out. I teach composition at the community college and call it work when I read drafts that smell like half-remembered coffee. That Thursday, I didn't put the ribbon back. I looped it around my wrist like a question I didn't yet know how to ask. Maybe I would have dropped it if I hadn't found the receipt the next day. Our shared tablet pinged with a notification. Palomar Rooftop, 2 Marigold Mules, 48, thank you. The timestamp sat where the truth does, plain and small. 8:41 p.m. Thursday. Yoga serves tea. Palomar serves temptation in copper, mugs with sprigs of something green standing like flags. I didn't accuse her. Instead, I watched the kitchen fill with light while she buttered toast like it was a painting. We have become that married, gentle with our small mornings, careless with the rest. Good class, I asked, and my voice sounded like a guest. Hot, she said, smiling. Instructor was a tyrant. She laughed and stole a corner of toast from my plate, which used to be foreplay. I held the ribbon in my pocket with 2 fingers and told myself a story I would not have believed from my brightest student. I went to the Palomar the following Thursday because there are only so many times a man can exhale and call it wisdom. I put on my good shirt, the one she likes. I told myself I was going for the view, not for the kind of proof you can't unsee. The elevator let me out into music and gold light. It was a warm night. The city had its collar open. At the far edge of the terrace, I saw her by posture alone, hips slightly cocked the way she does when she's listening with her whole body. A man stood close enough to borrow her breath. He was handsome in a catalog way, salt at the temples, jaw like a thesis. He leaned forward when he spoke as if he were telling her a joke nobody else could survive. She laughed into her glass. The laugh I know. They didn't touch for a long time. That detail matters. They stood in intimacy's waiting room, my wife's hand relaxed on the rail, his thumb resting on the stem of his drink like he was making promises to it. The space between them was charged and behaved. Electricity in a collar. When he reached out finally, it wasn't a grab. He brushed a curl behind her ear, and she let him. I don't know how I looked. I know how it felt. Like a door I thought we'd locked had been left not just ajar but inviting. I turned away and stared at the back of the bartender's vest because it looked like it could keep a secret. He poured me something I didn't want but could hold. I drank once for steadiness and set the glass down because I like to remember the moments I regret. Don't make a scene, a voice said beside me, and when I turned, a woman I'd never met was giving me a smile as sympathetic as it was dangerous. She was maybe my age, maybe a little younger, dark hair, a mouth that knew its way around both kindness and trouble. She slid a folded napkin across the bar with 2 fingers. My name was on it, Daniel. I didn't move, neither did she, the kind of stillness that puts people in paintings. How I started. She told me about you, the woman said. Not your wife, him. She didn't look over her shoulder. He's been gloating to his little circle about the married gallery curator he's going to rescue from boredom. Men like him call it rescue. She finally let herself glance, and her mouth tilted, the way people smile at dogs that don't know leashes. He forgets that wives are not always weak and husbands are not always asleep. "Who are you?" I asked, because fantasy is a dangerous tool and I needed to know which story I was in. "Rhea," she said. "I used to work for him. I know how he hunts." She tapped the napkin. "If you want to stop this before it gets movie tickets, bring the ribbon tomorrow. Room 504, Hotel Astoria." She held my gaze just long enough to make me feel both seen and undressed. "And don't tell Camille you saw anything. Not yet. Let her tell you first." "What ribbon?" I said too quickly. "The Thursday one," she said. "Men who cheat collect trophies. Women who think they're not cheating collect metaphors." She slid off the stool like gravity had an agreement with her. "Tomorrow," she said, turning away. "No pressure, but you look like a man who wants a door more than a wall." I went home with a different gravity inside me. Camille was asleep, face turned toward my pillow, ribbon-red mouth uttering whatever dream laws apply to women who smell like exercise and lime. I stood in the doorway because I am that kind of man, the kind who thinks thresholds are sacred. The red ribbon sat on the dresser where I'd left it after wearing it around my wrist in private like an idiot charm. I picked it up and let it pool in my palm, then tucked it into my jacket pocket as if it were evidence or luck. I couldn't tell which. At Hotel Astoria, room 504 was a quiet question mark. I knocked. The door opened on a woman in a white shirt with the cuffs undone, collarbone bare like an invitation or a confession depending on your religion. It was Rhea from the bar, which felt both inevitable and impossible. The room smelled like oranges and clean sheets. No perfume I could name, no guilt I had signed yet. "You came," she said, and there was no triumph in it, only relief. "Curiosity is a cruel teacher," I said. "I'm a good student." She smiled at that. "I didn't bring you here to seduce you," she said, "but I won't pretend I don't know how." She took the ribbon from my fingers and held it up. "Thursday," she read, and then set it on the desk with a kind of reverence that made it temporarily holy. "I brought you here to show you a map." She opened her laptop and turned it to face me. Messages scrolled. Him to her, him to me, her to her colleague, screenshots of calendar invites with coy names and salacious timing. The man from the Palomar, Adrian, had a wife in the suburbs and a taste for curation, of art and women. Rhea was in half the threads a year ago, back when she still had a desk near his. Fired for insubordination after she told him no where a yes was expected, she had collected her severance and his habits. She'd watched him learn Camille's world like a language. Donations, guest lists, bids disguised as compliments. "She thinks she's in charge," Rhea said, voice soft, almost tender. "She thinks he's a door she can open and close without consequence. He lets them think that until they forget which side of the room they're on." "And you?" I asked. "I'm the woman the wives never know," she said, like a joke and not a joke. "The warning they never get because somebody decided it was rude to tell the truth before dessert." She touched my arm, light, a possible future, and then let her hand fall. "I don't want your wife," she said, "and I don't want you, not like that." Not like that is a phrase with 1,000 colors. I felt all of them. "What do you want?" I asked. "For him to stop treating people like auditions," she said simply. "For you to choose your marriage before he decides for you." She paused. "And selfishly to see if you are who she says you are." "Who does she say I am?" "Careful," Rhea said, a small smile. "In love with doorways, hungry without being cruel. The sort of man who will always stand in a kitchen longer than is required because it's where the light tells the truth." She leaned back against the desk, hip touching the ribbon like a line drawn. "I want to know if she's right." I looked at the bed because it was there. The sheet was crisp, turned down just so. The city hummed outside, the sound of other people deciding. Rhea caught my glance and didn't bother to pretend. She walked to the minibar, pulled out 2 small bottles of something drinkable, and handed me one. "We can talk without a trap," she said. "It's more erotic than the trap if you ask me." We talked about jobs that make you feel like a clever mirror reflecting other people's wants, about the delicate labor of marriage that no one applauds, about desire and the way it can wake up in inconvenient rooms and still be honest if you treat it as a message, not a verdict. Rhea told me stories about how Adrian stages his seductions, donations, dinners, mentorship, like choreography. She didn't spare my wife, but she didn't skewer her either. Compassion looks different on people who have been burned and chosen to heal instead of harden. It looks like gentleness with good edges. At some point we were close enough that I could see the flecks of green in her brown eyes. At some point she laughed and touched my wrist again, a feathering familiarity. At some point the space changed flavors, from briefing to flirting to something like 2 people in the same weather under different umbrellas. She knew it. I knew it. "Do you want to kiss me?" she asked, not as dare but as diagnostic. "Yes," I said, because a man should not lie when the subject is temptation. "But I want to go home more." Her smile was slow and approving, like sunlight finding a floor. "You're the right kind of dangerous," she said. "Good, keep it." She picked up the ribbon and put it back in my hand, folding my fingers around it like a vow. "Take this home. Ask her what Thursday means. If she can say it without flinching, you'll know where to put your heart next." In the doorway, because yes, I linger, she stood close enough that I could read the tiny scar near her lip, the one you only see when someone is telling the truth. "If it goes badly," she said, "text me. I'll take you somewhere with better music and worse lighting. We'll talk about art and not touch each other, and it will be the cruelest form of mercy." Then she reached up and kissed my cheek. Not the mouth, not the neck, just the precise place that would glow on the elevator ride down. At home, Camille was at the table with our calendar, pen hovering. She looked up when I came in, smiled, and then, "This is important," saw my face. Not the shirt or the hour, me, and something in her shoulders lowered. "Can we talk?" she asked, like a person rehearsing a fall. I set the ribbon on the table between us. "I was hoping you'd say that." She didn't feign ignorance. She didn't make a scene about privacy or drawers or how receipts sometimes walk themselves. She touched the ribbon like it might be warm. Her eyes were shiny with the kind of tears that make apologies possible, not pretty. "I've been restless," she said. It felt harmless to talk to someone who made me feel like a beginning. I hate that sentence even as I say it. He was all compliments and attention, and I let myself be curated. She closed her eyes, opened them, looked at me while holding very still. "I didn't sleep with him. I let him touch my hair. I let him tell me I was the kind of masterpiece only he could see. I wanted to be bigger than our small life for a minute. And then I saw you across the bar on the first night I went, and I realized the thing I wanted was not bigger. It was closer." "You saw me," I whispered, feeling ridiculous and awed at once. "I know your shoulders the way I know my own breath," she said, and now she was crying, not performative but human. "I wanted to run to you. I didn't. I spent a week feeling like a thief in my own kitchen, and I couldn't stand it." She pushed the calendar away. "I want us, but I want us to feel like something we choose, not something we maintain." I told her about the rooftop and the ribbon and the hotel room where nothing happened and almost everything did. I told her about Rhea. Camille's mouth tightened, then softened, then surprised me by smiling a little through a tear. "Of course she found you," she said. "She's ruthless in the kindest way." She wiped her cheek with the heel of her hand. "Will you come with me to the museum tomorrow? We're going to return his donation and reassign the gala seats. I want your hand on my back when I tell him I curate art, not men." "Gladly," I said, and the way my voice sounded, like someone had cleaned it, told me how much of the last week had been a kind of held breath. We didn't make a movie out of reconciliation. We didn't tear clothes or spill wine to the floor. We did something better for us. We stood in the kitchen, the light honest and unflattering, and we touched each other like we knew the map but still wanted the journey. Her fingers in my hair, my palm on the small of her back. A kiss that didn't ask for applause, only presence. The kind of kiss YouTube wouldn't flag, but my bones would applaud for the rest of the night. I slept that night with the ribbon on the nightstand, a silly relic turned into a private flag. In the morning, Camille slid it into the drawer and put our wedding rings in my palm while she showered. The old ritual for cleaning them I'd forgotten we had, a superstition that says love shines if you tend it. At the museum, she was a revelation, poised, calm, lethal where she had to be. I stood half a step behind her as Adrien arranged his face into surprise and then injured pride. When he tried to angle the conversation toward misunderstandings, Camille tilted her head and said plainly, "I don't mix my labels. You made me a narrative I don't belong to. We're done." She took my hand as we turned, and the look on his face wasn't fury, it was bafflement. Men like him do not understand doorways unless they open onto mirrors. We went home early. We bought basil and lemons and the expensive pasta that boils into silk. We cooked with the window open, and she kept brushing past me in that way that says we know exactly what we're allowed to do, and we plan to do all of it slowly. I turned on music. We danced barefoot on tile because clichés survive for a reason. She pressed her forehead to mine and whispered, "Choose me again." "I never stopped," I said. "I just forgot how to say it out loud." Later, we lay on the couch and made a list of all the ways we could be a beginning for each other without needing a stranger's gaze to certify it. None of the items were scandalous. All of them were real. More dancing. More leaving our phones to charge in other rooms. More asking to be touched and saying where. More doorways. Fewer stages. I texted Rhea, "It's doorways for us." She sent back one word, "Good," and then a moment later, "Hungry." I laughed, showed Camille, and we wrote together, "Always, for each other." We are not perfect now. Who wants that? We are awake. On Thursdays, the calendar still says yoga. Sometimes I go with her and pretend to understand warrior poses. Sometimes she goes alone and meets me afterward on the Palomar roof, where we order ginger mules and kiss in a way that is not for cameras, but would pass any platform standards with flying colors. The ribbon lives in a drawer, not as evidence, not as threat, but as a reminder that people who love you will sometimes go looking for bigger when what they mean is nearer. And the only answer that ever worked for us was to pull each other close and prove it, one careful, hungry inch at a time.